What's going on, guys? It's Matt with the FF Mediators and the Faceoff Sports Network. Back for another Dynasty video. This time we're going to do some Dynasty sleepers. We're going to pull up the Dynasty Data Lab draft board, kind of walk through some ADP on 5 different guys, look at see where they're being drafted and where I think they should be drafted. Maybe check out a few trades and give some analysis on why I think these guys should be risers or will rise by the time we get to the start of the NFL season this coming year. But let's just jump straight into it. And my first guy is going to be someone that I've talked a lot about on this channel so far, and that's going to be Bucky Irving. Bucky Irving is RB6 currently on Dynasty Data Lab. He's closer to RB3 for me. I think he is a fantastic player, averaging 14.4 points per game. He's only 22 years old. He's got a ton of upside. He's already been established as the one in this backfield. He took Rachaad White's job. He absolutely took over and earned it. He's elusive as heck. He misses tackles like crazy. His rushing and receiving game is fantastic. I think he's someone that we are going to be doing everything we can to get because he's going to win a lot of people fantasy championships as we move forward. For me, when we look at this Dynasty Data Lab here, I've got the ADP board up. He's right here, pick 35 overall in the back of the third round. This is the 311. And for me, I think he should be higher. Like I said, he's RB3, so I would expect him to be ahead of Breece Hall and ahead of Devon Achane. And when you look at the names here, you can certainly argue these receivers and the quarterbacks. If it's a super flex, there's a lot of things to consider when building your team. But what I do know is that if I'm picking a running back, I want Bucky Irving over both of those guys. And it's not that those aren't staples for your team, but I do think Bucky Irving has the higher upside. Just 14.4 points per game, sharing a backfield with Rachaad White, where he was nearly splitting carries 50-50. It's incredible. I mean, Bucky's potential is really, really high. I would not be surprised if Rachaad White is gone after this year and it's truly Bucky's backfield. There will certainly be another name that will get some snaps just because we're in the era of committees. But as it stands right now, Bucky Irving is someone that I think should be drafted at least half a round higher, somewhere in the middle of the third round in startup drafts, just because he's that good. He's someone that I'm comfortable with being my RB1 on my team. Now, certainly you'd want Bijan or Jahmyr Gibbs or Saquon Barkley or even Ashton Genty, but I do think that Bucky Irving is a guy that you can just plug and play and know that he's going to produce for your fantasy team every time that he's out there. And when we look at his ADP history, it's tracked pretty well, 311 to the 401 over about the last month. And like I said, for me, I think it should be closer to that 306, maybe the 305, 304, somewhere in there, just because he's that good of a player. And when we look at some trades for him, let's see what we can find here. We've got Bucky Irving and a first for Bijan Robinson. I'd be interested to know if that 2025 first is, because certainly that could sway me. I'd be interested to know if that's the 112. Yeah, I'd be interested in Bijan. If that's the 102, I'd be interested in Bucky Irving in this case. But let's see if we can find another one. Here we got Bucky Irving for the 2025 first and a third. For me, like I just said, that's going to have to be probably a pretty early first. I'd want the 102, the 103, and a third if I'm going to end up moving Bucky Irving. But in most cases, I'm not because he's young. Like I said, just 22 years old. I think he's going to be a big-time player for our fantasy teams as we move forward. So he's definitely a guy that I'm going to target and see if I can find maybe someone that's a little bit scared of what might happen with him because he is small. But, man, he is as good as it gets to me. I absolutely love the guy and his talent. But let's just jump to our next guy down the draft board, and that's going to be J.J. McCarthy, the quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings. A lot of people are probably going to be off on this one, and that's okay. You see, he's going to be quarterback 17 on the Dynasty Data Lab draft board. For me, I think he's closer to about 13 or 14. He should be more in the third round of startup drafts, especially if we're in super flex. They're just so valuable to have a starting quarterback. And the argument for McCarthy is simply an argument for what is in Minnesota. And really, when we talk about the Minnesota Vikings, you can't go too far without noting Kevin O'Connell is a fantastic football coach. The guy knows how to coach a team and really dial up plays. I mean, yes, he's got weapons all over the place, and we'll get to that in a minute, but we saw Kirk Cousins be super successful in this offense. We saw Sam Darnold have his career resurrected this past season. So I really think that there's a world where J.J. McCarthy should be getting some of that, love for these guys that have already produced in this offense because J.J. McCarthy has an elite arm. No, he did not get to do it at Michigan, but that team was just different, built on defense and a run game. But when he did throw the ball, he was extremely successful. And let's just go ahead and pull up the board here. You see him at 48 overall at the back of the fourth round, 412. And for me, you look at Trevor Lawrence here, you see Brock Purdy, Baker Mayfield. I'd rather have JJ McCarthy than those guys. The weapons in Minnesota make it really, really interesting. He's got the best player in football in Justin Jefferson. He's got TJ Hawkinson, an established tight end, Jordan Addison, an established wide receiver, too, a run game in Aaron Jones, and we'll see if they add anybody else. I wouldn't be surprised if they do. And like I said, Kevin O'Connell and a solid offensive line. This is absolutely a team that I want fantasy pieces of, and JJ McCarthy is going to be a major benefactor in my eyes. And I just think that being drafted at the 412 is just too far back for me. If we look at some recent trades for him, we'll see JJ McCarthy for a 2025 first. Lord have mercy, I hope that 2025 first is early because he is worth way more, especially in a super flex league. I don't know the full team specifics here, but here JJ McCarthy for 2 second-round picks. If this is what you can go get him for, absolutely go and do it. Here's what we know about quarterbacks. If quarterbacks value is anything like history tells us, it is pretty safe. We look at cases like Bryce Young this past season, who played horribly. Remember that. He was horrible to start the year. He was horrible the year before that. And he's still worth more than a first because he got his career just slightly resurrected. There's tons of question marks in Carolina, and Bryce Young still has potential. JJ McCarthy's in the exact same situation. He's got a fantastic coach with a fantastic offense. As long as he is ho-hum and average, there is potential for him to maintain well above a first-round pick of dynasty value. So he is absolutely someone I would be going out to get on my roster if you can. I've already done it multiple times this offseason. JJ McCarthy is absolutely somebody I want on my team, and QB 17 is just too far for me. I think he should be going a little bit higher. But let's just jump to our next guy, and that's going to be Kenneth Walker, running back for the Seattle Seahawks. And this is going to be one that's just a story of injuries. There's been a lot of injuries in Kenneth Walker's career, but when he plays, averages 16.5 points per game last season. He's RB 13 on the Dynasty Data Lab board, and I think he's probably closer to RB 8 or 9. We certainly have some rookies that are going to shake up the running back draft order or ranking order, but we'll have to wait until we get the actual draft. But when you look at Kenneth Walker, he's 24 years old. He's the clear starter. And when we look at the Seattle Seahawks team, there's a lot of changes going on. We've got DK Metcalf on the move, Geno Smith on the move, Sam Darnold coming in, Tyler Lockett's out too. And that just tells me when things like this happen and you got a new team, let's lean on the run game. And to me, I think Kenneth Walker thrives in that role. That's what he did at Michigan State. That's what he's done so far in Seattle. And I think he's going to continue to do that. And looking at the board here, like I said, he's 65 overall right here next to Derrick Henry and towards the middle of the 6th round. And for me, I think he should just be a little bit higher. He should be closer to somewhere around James Cook at RB9, Josh Jacobs at RB10, and Kyron Williams at RB8. Now, certainly the board and your league settings are going to impact how high he should go, but I do think that Kenneth Walker should be somewhere in this 5th round. I think having him ahead of Chase Brown and Christian McCaffrey is not that crazy. Ahead of Xavier Worthy, not that crazy. I really think he should be somewhere in here because Kenneth Walker is an established player. You know what you're going to get. He's the clear starter. You got Sharp who's there, but we know what he is. He's a good complementary back. And most of these running backs are going to have a running mate. The age of, the bell cow is kind of over. Those are few and far between. So you need to get a guy that you can rely on. And I think Kenneth Walker is that guy. We could definitely see some TD regression for him, some positive regression, maybe get in the end zone a little bit more just because he's going to have that workload. We'll have to see. Like I said, this is a completely new Seattle offense, but he's definitely a guy that I'm targeting if I can go and get him. And let's pull up some trades really quick here and see what we can find here. We got Kenneth Walker for Jordan Addison. Certainly you can make the case that, maybe you're a wide receiver needy team and you have lots of running backs. But in this instance, in a vacuum, I'd much rather have Kenneth Walker than Jordan Addison. I mean, you're talking about a wide receiver 2 versus a plug and play starting running back 1 for a team who's probably going to be top 12. Let's see if we can find something else. Kenneth Walker for a 3rd and a 1st in 2025. Very similar to that Bucky deal. It's going to come down to what that 2025 first is. But if this is anything late, I absolutely want Kenneth Walker. Because if your goal is to draft a running back with that 1st round pick, what are the odds that you actually hit on a guy that's better than Kenneth Walker? It's not that guaranteed. I mean, you can certainly argue that at the start you're going to have good luck at that, but if we see a bunch of running backs get drafted in the first and second round, you need to be ready because those guys are going to fly off rookie draft boards. Probably between the 101 to the 105, you'll see three go. And it wouldn't surprise me if you see two or three go between the 106 and the 108 in most leagues. So you got to be ready that if you're a running back needy team, you are not guaranteed to get a good running back that's going to be plug and play with this draft class just because if they really are this good, and I think a lot of them are, and they get some good landing spots, they're going to fly off draft boards. So be ready for that. Let's get to our next player here. We're going to switch positions. We're going to go to Zay Flowers, wide receiver for the Baltimore Ravens. Coming off Lamar Jackson's insane year, I think it's interesting that Zay Flowers wasn't necessarily the benefactor of that. He's wide receiver 21 currently on Dynasty Data Lab boards. I think that's probably pretty close to where he should be, but his ADP is just a little bit too far. I think it's about a round lower than it should be. And like I said, Lamar was impressive, but the TDs that Lamar had with over 40, I believe, Zay Flowers only had 4 of those. So he should have some positive touchdown regression and really get into that end zone a little bit more. He's only 24 years old. He averaged 12.3 points per game this past season, and he's a really good player. So let's look at where he is on the draft board. Like I said, currently at 63 overall here next to Chris Olave. I think we should be talking a little bit more here. In the beginning of the 6th round, he should be probably ahead of DJ Moore in my eyes. And somewhere in here in this 5th round, just because, you see the names around him of Chris Olave, who's disappointed in his career thus far. There's no way around that. I do think Chris Olave is a buy. We'll talk about that another day. And I've been someone that's been very critical of him. But I do think that just the names here talking about in Dynasty, he's just simply better than them. I mean, Terry McLaurin is an aging asset on a good team where he's currently the one or projects to be the one. We'll see. But I think Zay Flowers is just better than these guys. There's a lot of potential for him to continue to grow in this offense. And he's someone that I really, really like. I mean, 116 targets this past season, only 74 catches. So if that improves just a little bit, he gets closer to 90, he's already going to get a fantasy uptick there. He had just over 1,000 yards, and I can see that going even higher as well. And like I mentioned, only 4 touchdowns. Now, certainly you could say that that's just kind of his role, but touchdowns aren't necessarily a sticky stat. These guys improve on that all the time. But let's look at some trades here for Zay Flowers and see what we can find. Right off the top, here's an interesting one. Zay Flowers in a 4th for Chris Olave. Certainly you can argue team build will be dependent on this, what you're trying to do. But I think I'd rather have Zay Flowers in that 4th than Chris Olave. But it's really close. And if you're an Olave guy over Flowers, I'm not going to fault you too much over that. Zay Flowers for Dalton Kincaid and Rashid Shaheed. I like Zay Flowers in that instance. I mean, Rashid's probably a 2nd-round player or worth a 2nd-round pick. Dalton Kincaid's been a disappointment. More on that in a minute. But you see these trades, and I just think that there's a world where Zay Flowers is just being a little bit undervalued right now. Certainly some crazy ones on here. Tyreek Hill for Devontae Smith and Zay Flowers. My word, who are these leagues? Here's a good one. Zay Flowers in a 2025 2nd for a 2025 1st. I would hope that this 2025 1st is very, very early because I'd rather have Flowers in a 2nd than a late 1st or a mid 1st even. I think Zay Flowers is a plug-and-play guy. You're going to get a bunch of work from him in this Baltimore offense. They like to do these little screen and hitches and utilize Zay Flowers' twitchiness to really get out in open space and make plays. So I think Zay Flowers is a guy that we should be looking to see climb up draft boards as we approach the start of the NFL season. And certainly he's a guy that you can go out and start trying to add to our roster as a possible buy because some of these trades are crazy. I think we might be a little bit too low on a guy who scored more than 10 points per game. And like I said, 12.3 is only 24 years old and is tied to an elite offense. But let's just go ahead and let's wrap this up and we'll get to our last player here. And this is kind of a little bit deeper into the draft, and that's going to be Tucker Kraft, the tight end for the Green Bay Packers. This one just surprises me. I'll be honest. He's currently 102 overall on Dynasty Data Lab. And when you look at him, he averaged nearly 10 points per game. He's currently tied in 9. And I just think that's too low in a Dynasty league. There's room for him to grow, continue to get better. He's on a fantastic offense tied with a pretty good quarterback. And he's the clear one. I mean, Luke Musgrave is there. He's had some injuries, hasn't really got to be on the field. But what I do know is Tucker Kraft is explosive. There's tons of times where he's been running down the sideline, making people miss, running over people, running around people. He is absolutely someone that should be drafted a lot higher than he's at right now. When we pull up the board here, like I mentioned, 102 overall in the middle of the 9th round, that's just too low. I mean, we're talking about Jalen McMillan's next to him. Kyle Pitts is next to him at tight end 10. And I understand Kraft is ahead of him, but Kraft has done significantly more than Kyle Pitts. You see Dalton Kincaid here at tight end 6 at 92 overall in the 8th round. Dalton Kincaid averaged 7.5 points last year. Kincaid's done nearly nothing in his career. The only difference is he's tied to Josh Allen. We continue to project that these guys should play better than they really are. And I think Kraft is a guy that has proven it on the field, whereas Kincaid has not necessarily done that. I think there's a lot of room for Kraft to continue to grow with Jordan Love. He's on that rookie contract. Jordan Love has got his contract. And I think that there's, some question marks there of who's going to catch the ball in Green Bay. You could argue who's your favorite wide receiver there. I do think they probably add a guy this offseason. You've heard a lot of talks about how they are looking for that big X profile that they still need. But what I do know is that Matt LaFleur is a fantastic coach, and he uses the tight end a ton. And that tight end in Tucker Kraft is a fantastic fantasy asset. And for me, I think he should be closer to tight end 5. I would put him ahead of Kincaid. I think him and Kittle are probably in that same tier, but I lean Kraft over Kittle just in the dynasty world, factoring it in age and things like that. But he should definitely climb up from being in this 9th round to somewhere in this 8th or 7th round. Especially if we're talking about a tight end premium league, you could probably go ahead and solidify he's going to be somewhere just a little bit higher. But, Kraft is a guy that I think is going to have a ton of potential to do a bunch of good things. This past season, he had 70 targets with 50 receptions and 7 touchdowns. That's absolutely fantastic. Averaging 14 yards per catch. The guy's just a big play waiting to happen. And that was he played the entire season in 17 games. He played the entire games in his rookie season, all 17 there as well. I just finished a startup draft with a lot of the Faceoff crew, and Tucker Kraft, I got him at the 905 in a tight end premium league, and I'm absolutely comfortable with that. I think he's going to be a nice plug and play guy for my roster. He's a young tight end to build around. Are there better tight ends out there? There certainly are. There's a bunch of guys in this draft we could talk about. But right now, out of all the tight ends that I know that are playing, I think Tucker Kraft is a top 5 fantasy tight end in dynasty fantasy football right now. So I think that's going to wrap it up for me. Be sure to let us know below who are your dynasty ADP sleepers. Please give that video a like. It helps us out a ton. Comment any questions you have about some dynasty players you've got, and I'm happy to come back and answer those for you. And we'll catch you next time, and maybe you'll be in one of our startup drafts. But until then.